Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from deltacx.com, and I'm very excited to present to you today episode 94 of the live podcasts. This one is the disproportionate pros and cons of UX bootcamps. Today is January 27th, 2021, and I'd like to waste no time and introduce our special guest today, who I hope I will pronounce much better than I have in the last week or two, Chad Zollinger. Is that close?
Yep, you got it. Right on.
Whew. So, Chad, we'd love to get to know you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Take as much time as you'd like, and please do spell your name so everyone else can find you.
Okay, yeah, I'm Chad Zollinger. The Zollinger is Zollinger, and Chad is just like Brad, just the California name. And I studied writing in college, a lot of literature, a lot of writing, and then going into the business world, got into SEO and content marketing. I did that for a few years. My first year and a half, I worked at actually the current company I'm at now. I returned to it just a year ago, but I worked there doing SEO. I worked at an ad agency writing articles. I wrote 17 articles a day for 3 months and got $500 at the end of it. And it was the worst experience in the world. But yeah, no, I learned a lot doing SEO and content marketing. Eventually, I went to a startup called the Domani Group. No one's heard of it. It's like funeral tech, and I did their website and did all the content. And then for various reasons, that they lost a lot of money and they had to lay off quite a few people. And that's when I decided to go to a boot camp. I had 2 months of free time, so I golfed pretty much every single day. And yeah, that's me. I golf, I work. But yeah, after my boot camp, we'll get into that. That's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
That's when I went back to bestcompany.com, where I am now.
And according to them, they're the best company. And I don't know them, so I have nothing to say about them. And Chad and I collided a couple of times on LinkedIn throughout some of his UX arc. And but we really collided a couple of weeks ago when I woke up and found that I'd been tagged in your post, and I'm still so honored and humbled by it, where you kind of said, and correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of posted, I went to a boot camp, I got a job, but I kind of wish that I hadn't done the boot camp. I probably should have just paid Debbie Levitt to coach me. And I was like, oh my God, not sponsored. So I guess let's start the story at the beginning of the boot camp moments. How much research did you do into different boot camps, and how did you choose the one that you picked? And if you're comfortable saying their name, say it. And if you don't want to say who they are, that's okay too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I had heard about Dev Mountain, the boot camp I actually chose. It's called Dev Mountain. It's a local boot camp here in Utah, and I think they have one in Texas or Arizona as well. I'm not sure. But that was my first priority, was getting one that I could go to in person and that it would be local here. And really, there are just 2 or 3 really big ones here in near Salt Lake City. Another one's called Lambda, and V School. I don't remember what the other one's called.
Oh,
but
I've heard of those.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up with Dev Mountain because I had like 2 or 3 friends who had been there before and said it was great. So yeah, sorry, did that answer your question?
Yes, and are you comfortable saying what it cost? Because I think people are always thinking about the costs of these things.
So when I posted, I said 12,000, which it was more than 12,000. It was $10,900 for the bootcamp itself, and then they required you to buy a Mac. And I just went ahead and bought the MacBook Pro, because I was like, oh, if this is going to be my career, then I'm just going to get the nicest one. And so, yes, it was only $10,900, but yes, they also required you to get a Mac.
And a $3,000 Mac.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get the nicest phone. It
Okay.
was actually like 1300.
Okay. The discount Mac.
MacBook. Sorry, MacBook,
MacBook.
not the
Right.
Mac.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, and just so people have a sense of time, we're talking in early 2021, and last year was the pandemic. I think you did the boot camp before the pandemic. When did you graduate?
It finished December, right before it.
Okay,
December
December
2019.
December 2019. Okay. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about your expectations going into the boot camp and what some of the realities were of the experience. So, based on your early research or just the expectations you made up. And by the way, I'm interviewing him, but if anyone in the chat room has questions, get them out there. We're going to ask them. Otherwise, I'm going to keep talking. So, get your questions out here, everybody. I'm watching. Let's talk about first, before we talk about the reality, what did you expect from the instruction and mentoring and coaching?
So I knew that coming out of it, I wouldn't be an expert, but I did think that I would be job ready and almost overqualified for a starting job. Um,
Okay,
I assumed that my previous experience would
translate.
lend well to learning UX as well. Which, I mean, it has helped, but I mean, it definitely didn't happen as I expected. Um, the other thing is that I expected very different like success rates after the boot or job search success rates.
For
I think it was one
yourself
of
or
the
for your
first days
class?
for just in general, like the average. And I
Okay.
remember I think it was one of the first days someone brought up the question, and the way they said it was like, well, we're not really supposed to say, but it's like 80-90%. And
Of graduates find a job.
yeah. And that was I don't know.
Was
There's
that
no way.
true?
There's no way. There's just no way. And maybe it's like 80 or 90% find any job within the next year,
They're
or 80 or
pumping gas.
90% find a job within the next 2 years. I don't know. It's just marketing, you know. At one point,
Right.
person pointed out in my post, and I think this is one of the bigger problems with boot camps. One person pointed out that they went to Dev Mountain's website and it's purely marketing. They don't really talk about the class itself. They don't really talk about what you learn or the UX of the UX program. They don't really talk about it. It's all marketing, which it's a business. I get it. You have to have marketing, but there's also UX. You have a UX program. Why don't you do it at all?
Physician, heal thyself.
I'm very surprised that nobody has reached out to me after it, because I know for a fact that people from Dev Mountain saw my post. They looked at my profile.
Mm,
The director of marketing looked multiple times, and again, I would just love it if they would talk to me about it, but they never have. There was a wall the entire time between the UX students and management. Every time you would talk to management, they'd say talk to your mentors, which was an issue because, yeah, other things we'll get into.
right. And also, let's quickly ask, how long was the program? Because very often you see 12 weeks, 24 weeks, 3 minutes.
Uh-huh.
How long was this one?
It was 3 months.
3 months. Okay. And did it claim to be UX UI, UX UI front end dev? Because they tend to claim you're going to know all the things.
No, it was so my opinion of Dev Mountain is that it is better than average in comparison to other boot camps. But yeah, in that regard, in regard to the whole UX UI thing, they solely talk about UX, and they
Okay.
bring up the relationship between UX and UI correctly as I've seen it.
Okay. So they weren't pushing you to be a visual designer, they weren't pushing you to write HTML.
No, nope.
Okay.
I mean, it's mentioned that like, oh, here are some other skills you can pick up, but this is a UX course.
Okay,
Um,
that hypothetically makes it better than a lot of other boot camps right there, but still not
yeah.
very good based on what I've heard from you. So let's talk a little
Uh-huh.
bit about the mentoring and the coaching. I found from people I talk to who are going into boot camps that when they see the boot camp marketing, they expect that they are going to be assigned a Debbie Levitt. They're going to have their own
Mhm.
personal Debbie Levitt or Darren or Dr. Nick or insert person here who is going to be looking at their work, rounds and rounds of their work, endless feedback, helping you level up. And then you'll later get a career coach who will tell you about portfolios and resumes. I find that's the common expectation. What was your expectation? And then what was the reality?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the word mentor for them is problematic because mentor means expert, or it actually
Should.
it feels like it should mean expert when they were closer to peers than mentors. Um, so I don't think any of my mentors, had more than a year experience in UX design,
But they
and
had real
I,
jobs. Or were they freelancing trying
no,
to find that first job?
they were. I think two of them were freelancing, trying to find the first UX job. One of them had worked at an agency doing UX for less than a year, or maybe just a little more, and she had quit and come over to Dev Mountain. The positions there, I believe, are part time, just hourly paid. So they're not like they aren't career choices, and that's one of my issues with it. It's either get an expert to work part time here, or pay someone a lot of money because they're qualified for it to be a mentor there. And another thing that happened, this will be just unique to my experience, not necessarily.
Oh, don't be
Um,
surprised, but go ahead.
okay, well, we did
Or
have
you'd be
a
surprised.
the like program director of the UX program there. He was there for like a week, and then he quit and took another job. And I think he had a lot of experience. He got a pretty good job in UX design at a decent company here in Utah. So the rest of the time after that first week, we were left with just people like a lot like us. And the thought passed through my mind a lot that even though these mentors had more like knowledge about UX than I do, I've been working longer than they have. Like I've been in the tech industry longer than they have, and they would say certain things where I would think that wouldn't fly at my company. Like that's not how it would work out, because yes, there are the users, but there's also revenue. And I think that one of the main disadvantages of a boot camp is that you don't get the experience of balancing the two, because it's a real challenge in UX. You have to balance the needs of like the needs of the company with the needs of the users, and yeah,
Right.
I thought that was a bigger disadvantage there.
Were the mentors able to give you good feedback on work you were doing, or did you think their feedback was not on the mark because they themselves were newbies? What were some of your impressions on the feedback you were paying to get?
That's a good question. I think I did lean on them a lot. I trusted them a lot. And honestly, as far as their design abilities, they're better. They're good. The question is, how does a newbie measure how well someone does UX research, or implement that research? Like
Right.
I can look at their designs and say, oh, I like this. I'm going to ask them advice on designs. But how much of design, like the actual clicking of buttons, how what percentage of that is UX? And I think newbies go in thinking that it's a large percentage of it, where it's not the most important part.
We often say, the Debbie's, Darren's, Dr. Nix, and so on, we often say that people really need to learn about cognitive psychology and human behavior because that's really at the core of all of this. Did the boot camp go into psychology at all?
Yes, as much as can be expected.
An
Um,
hour, 2 hours?
yeah, really. just probably I think we had like a 2 hour discussion and then watched a video, and I don't remember what the video was. Um, but I mean, it's really just a mention in the midst of a 3 month program. Something as important as the cognitive psychology is really just it's a mention. Like, hey, this is a part of your job. Eventually, you'll have to learn it.
What did you
And
feel they
that
spent the most time on? If a lot of these things were glossed over and skipped, where do you feel like the concentration of the educational content was?
the process, moving from research to design, and then the handoff to a dev team. So they do that really well at Dev Mountain. They have a program for UX and they have a program for web developers and iOS developers. They have different programs. And they actually, there's a newer thing they started doing. And one thing that I really like about Dev Mountain, probably their best advantage, is that you actually make an app and you actually hand it off to the dev team, and then you actually collaborate with the dev team um, on the app. There are things they could do a lot better with that, but um, that process from going from user research, story mapping, personas, all of that, moving into design, and then the handoff. That's what they kind of tried to hammer home on, and we did that process twice in the 3 months, which was a rewarding experience, but it needs to be done a lot more. You know,
Let
we
me
all
throw this one.
forgot what
Oh,
we
sorry.
did right after the boot camp. Sorry.
Okay, so not very memorable. Didn't stick. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
So knowing that this is a 3 month program and knowing some of the excited expectations you came into it with, where in the 3 months would you say you realized, uh-oh, I don't think this is what I thought this was?
Um, almost exactly halfway,
Okay,
and it was like a class wide crisis. I
the whole
mentioned in my
class.
post that I mentioned in my post that yeah, people were trying to talk to management to get refunds because there was such a so even though you like become friends with the other students, there's also like a competitive part of it. Like it's clear that there are two or three students who are ahead of the rest of the class.
Okay.
And all of those students go to these two or three students for advice, or basically look at them as like assistant and mentors. You know what I mean?
Right. De facto
Um,
leaders in a sense.
yeah, and I think we all just kind of realized that after a month and a half, we really didn't know that much. We weren't confident. We were thinking, what if I have to go into an interview? Since I was posting on LinkedIn during this time, I was posting all my designs. I did have people reaching out, like asking me if I'd freelance, and I kind of panicked and I thought, I don't know what to do. Like I'm a month and a half in, and I wouldn't know where to start. And I brought that up to my mentors. I talked to the UX designer at Dev Mountain because they have a paid UX designer there. Talked to her about freelance, got some advice. But yeah, sorry. Did what was your question again?
No, who even knows? By the way, we have lots of
Okay.
people in the chat room thanking you for coming out and talking about this, and a few people who have been through boot camps and are agreeing that they also had an underwhelming experience, even though they didn't necessarily go to the same one you went to. And I remember you and I having some private messages, and I was like, uh-oh, I'm so worried you're going to get out of that, and you're going to go into a job, and you're going to be in over your head. Because what did you really learn? I would say, what were some of your fears as you were nearing graduation day,
Um,
if you remember?
yeah. Um, my main concern was getting a job. Everything else didn't matter. I mean, it's not that it didn't matter, but I thought I'll figure it out later. As far as UX, I thought if I can get a job at an ad agency doing literally nothing for them as long as I have the UX title. I'll figure things out later. And I think that's a main concern for most people coming out of boot camps. And I had people messaging me after my post, quite a few of them. It was a common comment that I don't really care about the quality of the job. I just need to get it and then worry about what I'm learning and what I'm and how I'm progressing after that happens.
Did they make it sound like, hey, you might not be totally job ready when you leave here, so, you want to find a job where they're going to continue teaching and training you? I hear that a lot from graduates.
Um, I don't remember hearing that.
Okay.
Um, in fact, it was kind of, if I remember correctly, the last few weeks we went to the job prep um, seminars or whatever you call them there. They have a job prep department,
Okay.
which is an entire discussion by itself because it was a joke. um, but yeah, we went to the job prep, and they even like gave you suggestions on what your LinkedIn header should be, and you should say free UX freelancer or I am a UX designer, not like associate or learning or aspiring.
Let's talk about that for a
They
moment, if I
yeah.
can. We've had this conversation last year on this podcast where a lot of people who were trying to enter into UX were asking, what should my LinkedIn headline say? Because I think I'm a UX designer. And so you're saying your bootcamp was kind of instructing you to say UX freelancer or UX designer. Did that seem true or honest to you? Or what did you end up writing?
No, yeah, to continue that, it wasn't UX designers telling us what we should put on LinkedIn. It was a recruiter telling us to put UI/UX designer because that's what LinkedIn searches for or whatever. And I was sitting there thinking, I'm pretty sure I had seen posts from you about the problems with calling yourself that, or I've seen posts from someone, and I just did my own thing, which ended up working out. But
You have a
um,
good headline.
thanks. Yeah, I mean, that was the whole thing with my class. Like I said it to them, and they were like, "Oh, Chad, just making a stupid joke again." I was like, "Whatever, I don't care. It's me." Um, but yeah, sorry. What was your question again? Did they
Uh,
influence
uh,
us to?
Yeah, well, it was. I threw too many questions at you at the same time. I'm just so excited. So I apologize. I'm doing a bad interviewing job today.
No, no, no,
It,
no.
it was. It's okay. It's the
I'm a
focus is on
rambler.
you. Yeah, me too. So we were talking about setting up those expectations, and when kind of people realize that they were not going to be job ready, and maybe even start talking about what some of the early job searches were like. What were people's
Hmm.
responses to whatever you had in your portfolio or the experience you showed?
So yeah, going forward from our discussion about what your job titles can be after you graduate, you have this whole presentation where you feel pretty confident going into the job market. You feel like, okay, let's start interviewing. I've got this down. And probably 2 months into it is where you start to panic a little bit. Um, I was lucky to be able to get some interviews in the first month or so. Um, but yeah, there is a sense of panic, and a lot of people have trouble getting interviews or getting callbacks 3 or 4 or 5 months into the process, and at that point you just feel stuck. From the people that I've talked to, um, they're just kind of stuck doing the same three things as applying, reaching out on messaging random people on LinkedIn, um, and adjusting their portfolio, which can be an endless loop that goes nowhere.
Right.
So yeah, I think there's just a loop you kind of get stuck in the job search.
I meant to ask you earlier because you touched on this and then I forgot to chase it down. It's terrible journalist today, but I wanted to ask when the class was having their mid-class crisis, and it sounds
Oh
like
yeah.
some people may have gone to management or somebody either looking for a refund or looking to drop out. What were some of the outcomes of that? Did people drop out? Did they get refunds? Did management treat you like it's your fault? Can you speak to that a little bit?
No dropouts and no refunds. We pretty much all just had well, maybe about half the class um, had a discussion about it after multiple discussions, and one of the girls was like, "Okay, I'm gonna contact management and see if they can like give us a discount or refund or something, and just see what can be done." And essentially, they told her to talk to the mentors. And
The mentors
the
are
problem with
kids.
that Well, the problem with that is our main concern was the mentors.
Oh,
Like that's that's like we wanted to like point out, hey, we paid $11,000 for this, and we've got people who are great and I love them, but they a lot of the times they have to refer us to a YouTube video,
mm,
or I don't know. Their advice is kind of constrained to purely design advice, or move this here, move that here. Um, and you get and just after a month and a half of that, it was just a little bit. We had a moment of panic where we don't really know a lot about UX, and we paid a lot of money, and so yeah, nothing really came out of that. I was hoping that Dev Mountain would reach out to me afterwards and say anything, say something, but
right.
it never happened. And there were a few specific students in my class who, one kid who probably my best friend from the class was struggling a ton. He was just behind for one reason or another. He was a great person. He had just finished med school, decided he didn't want to do it, and then started doing Dev Mountain. So extremely intelligent, but for other reasons, he was just behind. And the discussion I had with him was that he felt like stuck. He's like, I paid this money. I kind of want to like try something else, maybe just do graphic design, but I can't get my money back. And yeah, that's really where the most of the frustration for me comes in, is when I think about him and a couple of the other students who just still haven't gotten jobs, um, after more than a year. Um, yeah, the boot camp is not designed for people coming out of high school or just jumping into tech. It's just not made for those type of students. Unfortunately, it's not that these students can't become UX designers. It's just that you need more.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. And by the way, we usually have 9,000 questions by now. We do have people watching us live. I think they're just hanging on your every word. So I'm going to keep, I guess I will keep throwing questions at you. But if anybody has questions, please do ask them. We actually have Mr. Chad here and he's live. So join in. And of course, please remember to subscribe here on the YouTube channel. Usability test that subscribe button. Make sure it works. Empathize with the like button. Make sure you are telling YouTube that this wasn't so bad. You can join our Slack channel, which is totally free. And of course, now we have the tip jar, which is optional, but will help pay for the new computer I ordered today so that I won't keep having stream crashes. So yes, the computer has been ordered. I think it's due to get here early March. So thanks to everybody donating to the computer fund. Gosh, I have just so many questions. I don't even know where to start. I'm trying to think. I wanted to ask a little bit about the school's standards. Very often I hear, oh my gosh, anybody could get into this school. Now I'm competing against a whole bunch of people who probably shouldn't even be working in UX, and everybody graduated and got their certificate. There seemed to be no standard. Nobody failed UX school. What are some of your opinions on the standards for getting in and the standards for graduating?
Yeah, I think they're. Um, what were the standards? So we did have like a list of assignments that was on some online hub. I don't remember what it was called, but we did have a list of assignments, things you need to do, videos you needed to watch. Um, and those were not basically you just check the mark and you didn't actually have to do it. And then you had to complete two projects or to have two case studies in your portfolio.
To
I think
graduate.
those were the requirements for graduation.
Oh,
Yeah, two case studies in your portfolio, and you completed all those assignments. So there were no like grades or some certain level of expertise or accomplishment that you had to have other than mark checking a few boxes. And I don't know what other boot camps are doing with that. And it never really occurred to me that the level of achievement was might be too loose. But that's a good point.
yeah, I've noticed nobody seems to fail UX school, yet people fail
Yeah,
all
no.
kinds of schools all the time. And I would think, and especially
Uh-huh.
when you talk about your friend who was struggling, my first thought
Mhm.
as just a human being was somebody, take that guy aside, find why he's struggling, see what concepts he's not totally connecting to, see the weaknesses in his work, help lift him up or help him know UX isn't for him.
Mhm.
Sounds
Yeah.
like that didn't happen.
Yeah, no, 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 no. Well, they did start having one-on-ones, I think, halfway through when that might have been a response to the little crisis we had. They did start pulling each aside and having one-on-ones, but they were pretty rare. They were pretty infrequent. So
We've got some questions.
yeah,
Rebecca in the LinkedIn channel asks, were you working during your boot camp or was the schedule too time consuming?
I was not working. It was 8 hours a day, and I'd saved up to just block out this time so I could just focus on UX.
Okay, thanks. And Natalia in LinkedIn says, thank you so much for sharing this, Chad. What would you recommend as an alternative for UX boot camps?
So I've had a lot of ideas about this, and it's not perfect, but my thinking is that just because experience is the best teacher with especially with UX, and this can go a lot of different ways, and maybe Debbie has an opinion about this, but I made my own website. I've managed my dad's website for a while, and I made my own website a while ago, just doing SEO and stuff. And I learned so much from that that I think it would be beneficial to at least try to make your own website, not just a portfolio website, but something that actually has the potential to create revenue. Um, and sorry, what was I going to say about that? Yeah, and if you think about it in terms of money, and this is what I kept thinking of, like the first week I was in my boot camp, I counted how many people were there and how much it cost, and I just added up how much the boot camp was making off of just our class, and it was always in my mind, and that's how I think now as well. If I had taken that 11,000, given 3,000 of it to Debbie to teach me however many sessions that gives me, and they then take 5,000 of that to make my own website, um, wouldn't that get me more? Like, isn't me creating my own website and doing the research for it and all of that? Like, yes, I will make a lot of mistakes, but I'll learn a lot. Isn't that even being $7,000, $4,000 less than I paid? Isn't that more experience? Isn't that more impressive to a UX recruiter? And these are the type of thoughts that I have. Yeah, there's more to do. Yeah, you have to do a few other projects and learn UX, and it would be difficult on your own. But if Debbie was there, and I was
Not
talking to her
sponsored.
about if a Debbie was there, if she doesn't want me to say specifically her, if a Debbie was there, just helping me along, wouldn't it be a pretty impressive project that I just completed? And it would be, and I said 5,000 to make a website. You don't need that much. You need 300 to get it started, maybe some more if you want to have some custom stuff. But Yeah, that's my thought about that. At the very least, as an alternative to boot camps, just a mentor. And I don't know how much it costs in the end. It's definitely not $11,000 over 3 months. Um, but yeah, that's what I would say. That would be my guess. I can't really say what would be better because no one has created the perfect product after this. And I actually had a comment or a post, I don't remember what it was, but I talked about how somebody is going to fix this. Like there's so much pain, and not pain, but there's
There's
user
pain.
pain. Yeah, there's actual pain, there's user pain, and people are talking about it, and they're talking about it more and more to the point where somebody who's smart, not me, is going to come up with something really valuable, a good solution. That's just how product design works. It's a response to crisis, and I would call the whole boot camp situation sort of a crisis. There's people a year plus, 2 years plus into the job search, which is not good.
Yeah, and I've been reminding people that in many cases, the reason people can't get these junior jobs is because employers move the goalposts. Employers saw so many people coming out of boot camps who, for the most part, were unqualified and not ready for the job. So instead of having to deal with all those applications, employers said, you know what? We don't want you if you haven't had 1 year of real work. And that immediately cuts all the boot camp people off because you've had weeks or months of instruction. Now you don't qualify for a junior job, not even close. You're going to have to find some other way. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing. It's a paradox. It doesn't fix itself. How do you get your first job if you can't get your first job? We haven't solved that yet. I'm going to be on this show on February 8th. I'm going to be talking about my apprenticeship model. I've been secretly doing an apprenticeship program, and I'll be telling everybody what I did and how I think companies can do it, but companies have to freaking do it, and that will build the bridge. But as for alternatives, I feel like there aren't a lot of good alternatives out there. I am enjoying coaching people on their private projects and their projects and whatever. But again, even if I do a great job coaching you, if every job requires a year of real work, people don't have that. We just got a giant message in from LinkedIn. I'm trying to read it. So Ivan says, I went through Brain Station in June 2019 in Canada. I had a fantastic experience. I felt very confident in getting a junior UX UI role and having the ability as a junior to work through the design process. I worked as a web developer for 3 years at a digital agency prior to my transition, and I have a bachelor's, a BSc, so conducting research wasn't brand new. That must have given me a lot of my confidence. I'm still reading this LinkedIn comment. Personally, the main negative experience for a lot of us grads was that their marketing didn't align with the market when we actually graduated the program. They claimed about 95% of grads were being hired within 6 months, but as Chad mentioned, after a few months of job hunting and getting no tangible results, the realization soon kicked in that a junior was actually someone who had at least a year of experience. So that's exactly what we were just saying. So, yeah, and Nicholas in LinkedIn is saying, where are the apprenticeships? And I agree. That's why I'm making my model free and public, and I hope people will use it and improve upon it, because I'm telling people now, don't go to a boot camp if they can't build a bridge between whatever the hell education they're giving you of its dubious content and quality and getting you into an internship, apprenticeship, or something that will be real work.
Mm-hmm.
So I know there's no question there. That's commentary. But what was I going? There's something I was going to ask you, and I should have written it down. So you found a job with your old company.
Yeah.
and can I ask how much real UX is in your job?
It depends. It depends completely on how much I actually knew going into it. Being out of a boot camp without a mentor, and how much do you say that type of person knows UX design? I'd say that when I was doing UX, which I'm not actually actively doing it now, I'm a product manager now as of a week ago. Um, but I would say in the 3 or 4 month span when I was actively trying to do UX design, that I was doing it 20% correctly. The thing is that the site has been successful. The website that I redesigned has been successful. It has driven revenue, and it's going to lead to some more resurrections of websites in my job. Um, so, yes, I'll have the opportunity to do it better. Hopefully, hopefully there's a creation of budget where I can hire a real UX designer or something along those lines. Um, but the way the company is structured now, the value that the company places in UX design, and even the company's definition of what UX design is part of the problem.
So
Um,
true. So
so,
common.
and then how do you measure that from the outside? I was in a position where I had worked at the company before, but I didn't really know what UX design did when I was there. So, um, I love my job. I love the company I'm at. Um,
But it's kind of not
yes, it's
UX.
flawed. It's and I knew that, and I had discussions with my manager and actually multiple people there about how this is not UX. I made sure to make that a point, and it's a known thing, and as part of the reason that I changed my job title. Um, Hopefully down the road, I learn more about it, and I get better at UX. I think I've just dipped a toe in the water, but I love UX. I love what I've learned. Yeah.
Yeah, and I made a note here to ask you about what I hear from a lot of boot camp grads is, oh, my school told me to just find a job where they're going to continue coaching me and someone will mentor me. I'll get into a company where someone will review my work and I'll keep leveling up. For your particular experience at the company you're at, was someone assigned to you or designated as this is your UX mentor or coach? Does anyone at this company do UX other than you?
Nope, no one was assigned to me because I really didn't have a manager. They kind of created a position for me. There's just an advantage of having worked there before. They trusted me, and they kind of just said, "Hey, there's this website that hasn't been maintained for 7 years, and we're backing off of it, and we can give this to you." Um, so that was part of it. The other part, yes, there were UX designers there. Um, I think one was a graphic designer that they just changed her title to UX designer. I'm not sure about that.
I've seen that.
Um, the other was a career UX designer, and he was, I think, really experienced. I didn't talk to him much, but I actively fought in the first 3 weeks to 4 weeks, fought to like be on his team because technically I wasn't on his team, or I wanted to at least have meetings with him. I wanted to learn from him,
Right.
and that I ended up on his team, on the product team, because of that. Um, and he was actually let go a few months later, so
Ah,
I learned some things. Yeah.
oops. Okay. A couple of comments from the chat room, and again, keep the questions coming. And earlier, Marisol had said she recommends David Travis's Udemy courses. I haven't seen those, so I can't personally. I'm not for or against them, but she said they're $45, and she recommends them possibly as a bootcamp replacement. And let's see, we also had a question. Where was it? Nicholas was wondering if anyone has a list of companies and their UX maturity. That would be great tools for job searches. I don't know of any such thing, and I think that's unlikely to happen only because sometimes in companies it's team to team. Like this team has a UX person and they get UX, and this team's doing well. This team over here doesn't have a UX person. They don't get it. They're grumpy. So I'm not even sure we could go by company.
It'd be very difficult to measure as well.
Yeah, it can be subjective. We've got some more questions, and Nick, I did see what you posted, but I'm gonna have to get to it later. I want to get to some of these other questions Nick, I think you might have a horse in the race on this one, but keep writing. Emmy says, after your boot camp experience, did you speak to other graduates from different boot camps for comparison? Did you feel that problems like mentor quality span across boot camps? Nice question.
I didn't speak directly to any, but I've been very active on LinkedIn, and I've probably talked to over 200 people, boot camp graduates who don't have jobs yet. I've probably chatted with over 200. I haven't counted. I could go in and count, but um, over the last year, I've probably talked to quite a few. Um, and yes, I've found that most of my issues are reciprocated, and in a lot of cases, they're a lot worse with other boot camps. I mean, if you weren't here earlier, I had said that I think that Dev Mountain is better than average. It's got a few advantages that other boot camps don't, but even then, I still have a problem with it, and it's debatably not worth doing at all. Um, so yes, maybe there's a boot camp out there who's doing it exactly right, but I don't know who it is, and no
And
one has told me.
I've had people like track me down and battle me on LinkedIn over that. They'll say, "Well, our boot camp is really better," and it's always one that I've heard like the worst things about. And I'll be like, "Are you sure it's better?" Because I've spoken to some of your students and they hate you. We've got a question in LinkedIn from Ivan who wants to know, did you seek out an experienced mentor, such as using ADP list, during those months while you were trying to do UX to ensure the UX work you did was as good as it could be given the circumstances? Before you answer that, I want to mention that today I looked at some people on LinkedIn who were on ADP list. They graduated a boot camp in 2019 and they put themselves on the ADP list in 2020. So I just want to say quickly, not everybody who is a mentor or is on ADP list is experienced. Do your homework, check out their LinkedIn. So did you work with an outside mentor or coach?
I didn't. The first person I reached out to was actually Debbie, and it was when I got my job. And she gave me a lot of valuable information just in the beginning that definitely influenced how I approached the job I had received, and how I talked about UX design, because she made the point to say that you might not actually be doing UX design as it was meant to be done. And I've been very careful about it because of that. So yeah, even the smallest amount you can reach out to an actual UX design mentor will help, because I did the smallest. Um, I did the smallest I could. I should have started doing weekly sessions with Debbie, or something like that. Would have turned out a lot better. I probably will in the future. But yeah.
I hope so. Be great to work with you. Now, we did have a question earlier from Nick Morgan, who was on our show late last year. So the extremely lovely Nick Morgan. He wrote, what about boot camps that provide a mentor and provide a mentorship with a real company? And then he wrote, asking for a friend. But we know that Nick is a mentor at a boot camp. So I think the friend is himself. And we see through your shallow ruse. My answer to that is, other than the handful of Nick Morgans that are out there mentoring people through boot camps, I have heard nothing but negatives about people's mentors at boot camps. I have heard they're visual designers. I have heard they're front-end developers. I have heard they graduated the boot camp 6 months before. To me, Nick, you are the anomaly. You are not the typical mentor people are getting. I've had a lot of boot camps reach out to me and say, will you come mentor at our boot camp? And I will not, because I cannot support what is happening at these boot camps with my presence. And in fact, if I can quickly say, the other day I found that General Assembly lists me as one of their instructors. And I have never taught at General Assembly. I do not hold them in high regard, but it looks like they're hoping to get some cred, and I'm on their site as an instructor. I guess if they don't take it down after the email I sent, we'll have to have my lawyer write to them. How about that? Any other questions? We've got about 10 more minutes from anybody else. I'm trying to remember what else I was going to ask you. Is there anything, any part of the story you wanted to make sure you told that I have forgotten to ask you about?
Yeah, in the meantime, while we're waiting for more questions, the one thing that I would want to bring up about boot camps is the evangelization of the students afterwards.
Mm.
Um, and this is huge, and this is one of the biggest that I talked to with all those people who've reached out to me on LinkedIn, is that they don't say it on in public, or they don't post about it. They don't. No one's going to say I had a bad experience at my boot camp,
It's so
because boot
rare.
camps have done a good job of attaching themselves to the success of the student. And by that I mean the student can't say that their education was bad, or it means they're a bad UX designer.
Right.
Um,
You must have not worked
and
hard enough.
yeah, exactly. And there's just, and it's difficult to get away from that. And I think it's important to your development as a UX designer to come to terms with that you might have had a bad experience, and to talk to people about it, because is that not part of the UX design process, is to explore products and explore the pain points, explore what's wrong with things and what needs to be solved. Um, so I think that's probably the biggest thing in my mind. And it's the reason that so many people go to boot camps. I went mainly because other people said it was awesome. And some of them still don't have jobs. And so it's like, why are we talking about how awesome it is you if it's not good enough to get you your first job?
Yeah, and I also want to. I think what you're saying is really important because I also heard from some of the people that I interviewed privately about a year ago about their bad boot camp experiences. I heard about how the school really pressures some people to leave positive reviews on websites that collect reviews. The school sometimes has bad reviews taken down, and I also know that very often the school is surveying people or sending out NPS scores right when you've graduated. So you are still high on life. You are still excited about the boot camp, excited about your job prospects. So your NPS score is probably high. You'd recommend this boot camp. This was great. They don't seem to ask you this 6 months later, a year later. And I even saw on LinkedIn the other day a woman who's an instructor at a boot camp I shouldn't name, and she had, for some reason, her NPS score listed in her LinkedIn as if this were something really good. Now, an NPS score is a score from 0 to 100, and usually it's how likely are you to recommend this to a friend or someone. And she was proud to say her score was 72. I thought that seemed low. I thought that was like a C
Yeah, that's fucking.
minus. And I wasn't too sure if she was bragging or, and I brought it to someone else's attention and they said, maybe other instructors have lower scores and hers looks good. And I was like, this doesn't seem like a good score. Uh,
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, so fascinating on the post school evangelizing. I've heard about that as well, and a really great point. And I have found that most students are scared to speak out about their experience. They're afraid if they look like a complainer or a negative person, they won't get a job. Did you at first feel like, ooh, I can't really say that this was bad. I really just have to play it cool?
Yeah, even my post a month ago, or whatever it was, when I was approaching a year after graduating, or actually I was over a year after graduating, I was still nervous, because not because I care about Dev Mountain, because I don't, but because I care about the mentors I had there. That they were awesome. Um, they weren't like super experienced, but as people, they were really great. Um, and I didn't want to come across as saying Dev Mountain was not a good experience, so these mentors are bad at their jobs. I didn't want to get them fired, because that's not the problem. The problem is the organization. It's the business strategy, the business structure. But yeah.
Yeah, we've got a point in the Nick is back. Nick the everything. He's back in LinkedIn saying, "How might the gap between graduating a boot camp and getting a job be bridged?" Now Solomon answered, and always good to see Solomon. Said through internships and proper entry level roles. But I've noticed that most internships expect you to be a university student or a university graduate. So I don't think the internship is the way. I guess, Chad, if you had the magic wand and you could build that bridge between self-study or boot camp education and that first job, what would your dream outcome for that look like?
Um, this is helping me think. This is
Thanks.
nice.
Okay, I can run it again.
uh, I would say that an internship during a mentorship. Um, so not a full time boot camp, but I would still say some sort of relationship with a mentor where I have a weekly or daily discussion, an hour long session or something, and alongside I'm doing actual work,
On the
um,
job
and
training.
on the job training. And what I was in my earlier alternative was to make your own website and talk to a mentor. But yeah, that's another thing. I'd love an actual internship or an actual part-time UX design job while I'm talking to an outside third-party mentor. Because I mean, I think the third-party part of it would be important in this scenario.
I agree.
Don't have any business biases. You know what I mean?
Right, no horse in the race.
Yeah.
We've got just a few more minutes. We're going to have to wrap up, but I want to remind everybody, especially Nick Morgan, that on February 8th, our podcast will be me talking about my new apprenticeship model. I've been secretly running an apprenticeship program since August. I had 8 apprentices in different areas. I made a lot of mistakes and I got some things right, and I'm going to be presenting what I believe is a good model for an apprenticeship, and I am hoping that companies will try it and improve upon it and help me make it better, but freaking do it. Freaking find great people with potential and get them in, not the people who would fail the UX school, the good people, and get them into the program and get them on the job training. And Curran says on the job training would be amazing. I finished Springboard's UX design career track course last year, and towards the end you're paired with a real company for a 1-month project. That's as real as it gets. That is, it's a 1-month project, and I hope you're getting good coaching on it, but it's only 1 month, and for a job that wants a year, it's still not enough. So I want to see boot camps building longer bridges than we got you a 3-week contract somewhere type of thing. So with our last few minutes, other than any things you want to go into, please remind everybody where they can find you and follow you. Are you LinkedIning? Are you tweeting? Are you Instagramming? Are you Mediuming? How do we find you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm mainly on LinkedIn. I've made a point to delete my Instagram app and Facebook app. I just don't get on it anymore. But yeah, I started out on Medium, so I'll occasionally write an article on Medium, but I'm mostly on LinkedIn at just Chad Zollinger, both of them. No nonsense with my name.
As
It's
seen on
it's it's
TV.
too much. There's too much nonsense in it already. Yeah.
No, don't say that. Everybody's very happy and thanking. And Emmy says, Debbie and Chad, thank you for your insight and sharing your experience. And Chad, for sure, like we were just saying, people are afraid to come out and talk about their bad boot camp experiences. And I think that is the cycle that continues the bad boot camp experiences, because people aren't saying, you know what, maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe that's
Mhm.
not the best use of time and money. There's also check those of you who are on YouTube, please go into the Delta CX live stream podcast playlist and look up episode 56, How Proficient Can a UX Bootcamp Make You, where I talk about my phases of proficiency model. And also check out, I forgot what number it is, 80 something maybe, which is what is the value of a UX education. So two totally separate free videos I've got up there. Larry Marine is here. Always love him. And he says, I have 2 boot campers on my team. They're both awesome, but they continually say things like, wow, they didn't teach me that in boot camp. I think boot camps are a good starting point. Maybe. Chad, let's ask you, are boot camps a good starting point? You can say no. You can say yes.
I would say no, but I think they can be, but I would say no.
Me too. There sounds like it sounded like that'd be followed by 12 ifs, like some sort of future fantasy if.
If you can get it for less than $2,000, maybe. That's still a maybe in my mind. Again, there's just too many good alternatives that I would have liked to have tried.
Yeah, and at one point I was excited about UXDI, which is out of Ireland or Scotland, because their program was just UX, not visual design, not front-end development. It was all online. It was like just over $2,000. And they promised mentoring and all this stuff. And when I started digging, and so I started recommending it because I thought, okay, that sounds pretty good and that's a good price and you're going to get your certificate and everyone will be happy. But when I started digging into the program, I found that there were a lot of holes in the curriculum. Like you never really learn information architecture, but you're told to redo a website's navigation, I guess by guessing. Magic. And they also promised you mentoring, but the mentoring was one conference call a month where the mentor would look at 2 people's work. And maybe you were one of those people and maybe you weren't. So I can't, even those inexpensive ones, I'm having trouble being totally thrilled.
See, that's part of the problem. It's just too hard to find. If there are a few good ones out there, it's too hard to find. I wish there were some sort of very aggressive, unforgiving accreditation organization that gave boot camps a standard that they have to reach.
Totally.
And
yes.
if they're not accredited, then buyer beware type of thing.
Yes.
But there isn't,
absolutely.
Unfortunately.
You're totally right. And Marisol is on a roll, and she is saying, reading the design of everyday things would be a better starting point. Reading the Nielsen Norman Group website would be a better starting point. Dimitra is on LinkedIn and saying, I'm doing some UX courses on UX Design Institute. I was just talking about them, and I think they are missing too much and not giving you the mentoring you need. And everyone's saying thank you. And Marisol still loves David Travis courses, so she's plugged him twice. Again, I don't know, but everyone can check that out. Oh my God, we're running over. Thank you so much, Chad, for this. Maybe a part 2 in the future when you get that real UX job. And if there's anything any of us can do, let us know. So I will just say thank you again. Everybody subscribe. We've got a lot more exciting podcasts coming up, of course, including February 8th's apprenticeship. Let's talk about it. Help me make this thing better. And Derek says, go to college and get a real degree. And I have to say, I've seen a lot of boot camps from people who got masters, and I've seen a lot of portfolios from people who went and got a master's, and their portfolios look the same as the boot campers. So I am not totally hot on degrees either, though I agree in theory you should learn more. Oh my God, Chad, any last words?
No, thank you, and good luck to everyone.
Yes, good luck to everyone. Thank you again to Chad and all of the excited people in the chat room, and I hope to see everybody Monday for our next adventure. Thanks, Chad. See you on LinkedIn.
See ya.
Bye.
Delta CX, available for CX and UX consulting, projects, and training. Contact us for a free consultation.